know sometimes I like visual aids. So I have my friend here with me. Saint Benedict was to have said, "Keep death before you always." And actually there was a custom among monks in the Middle Ages. When they would travel, they would carry a skull with them. Isn't that just uplifting? But I have a news flash for you tonight. Every single one of you, including myself, is going to die. No matter what secular society says, each one of us at some point is going to die. We cannot escape that. And oddly enough, that is a part of life. And it's something that we have to acknowledge. And that is part of why the church celebrates this feast day. All souls, the faithful departed. We need to acknowledge death and acknowledge that death is not the end. I want to make 2 points tonight. First, you may notice that I'm wearing black, and some of you who are older may not have seen a priest wearing black since you were a kid. It was normal. Now, another layer to that, before the Vatican II Council, if a blind man was allowed to be ordained, which, by the way, blindness before Vatican II was an impediment to orders. He had to get a dispensation directly from Rome to get permission to be ordained. So if he was given that dispensation, he was allowed to say one of 2 masses: the votive Mass of the Blessed Virgin Mary, or the votive Mass for the dead, which is the Mass we are celebrating tonight. And the reason for that was because in the pre-Vatican II Mass, which was a bit more elaborate than what we're used to today, the 2 shortest Masses were the votive Mass for the Blessed Virgin and the votive Mass for the dead, so they could be memorized. And so that is why a blind person was usually in black, because most Masses during the week especially were votive Masses for the dead. And before Vatican II, it was more common that you wore black for votive Masses for the dead and for funerals. After Vatican II, that changed a little bit. The idea came forth, we should be wearing white more than black. However, the liturgical books still have black as an option. And so, me personally, I'm going to wear black for funerals and for votive Masses for the dead. Not because I think that's how it should be, precisely, but because it helps me to remember where people like me have come from. It helps me to acknowledge that people like me have had to deal with a lot to be ordained. And along with that, we need to be comfortable with darkness and death. And that is ultimately why for over 1,000 years, black was normal for funerals and votive Masses for the dead. We have to have death before we can have resurrection. And that is my second point. First of all, blind people, it's a part of our spirituality to experience darkness and have to grapple with that. And it's difficult. And to acknowledge that and come to terms with it helps people like me to survive. In the church's light, quite literally, to acknowledge death means preparing for something even greater, resurrection. Unfortunately, I think we've gotten into this rut of wanting everything to feel good all the time. And that was a symptom of the 70s and 80s, which are over. They're over. And we need to acknowledge we have to suffer at times. We have to endure trials. We have to grapple with death. None of it resurrection does not make sense unless we acknowledge death. Jesus dying on the cross for us. That's the center of our faith. And that's why I think sometimes we need to make that important decision to acknowledge death and to show it and to proclaim it. That's part of what this weekend celebration is about, is acknowledging that there have been people who have died and gone before us, who are praying for us, and we need to pray for them. May we acknowledge the sufferings of this world and of death. It's okay. It's okay. And I'll be honest with you, I get offended when people tell me, well, you shouldn't wear black for funerals and things like that. It's too depressing. Well, again, that takes away from my spirituality as a blind person and a Catholic who acknowledges death. I've grappled with darkness. I grapple with it every day. I grapple with my mortality as well, and we should all do that. The church gives us these gifts of these traditions to help us through this life. And I challenge us to keep death before us always. And if we do that, I think we will be young forever. Amen.
Amen.